Okay, I keep forgetting about Patreon and reminding y'all that if you're capable, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Obviously, do take care of yourself and your community first, but I'm going to be reminding you of this just because it is a necessity for me at this moment. Okay, in today's video, I wanted to continue talking about self-actualization or self-realization, something that I already started talking about this week, but we have to understand that true subjectivity, true personal subjectivity, therefore true agency, is not possible without other people. And it is something that is very obvious to some people. They're like, duh, of course, we're all influenced by each other. But in reality, living in current conditions, living under imperialist, virtualized, imperialist, capitalist conditions, we cannot fully, truly create our own subjectivity, or develop, rather, our own subjectivity, because we do not have subjective collectives, we do not have intersubjectivity. So intersubjectivity is a term that Marina Burik is introducing in the second part of her book, A Virtualized World of Capitalism. She talks about how in this space of intersubjectivity, where the subject of the collective influences the formation of the individual subject, which to me sounds like Althusserian talk. It sounds like big subject, small subject, ideological subjects as a whole, but she does not use the same vocabulary, but I think the constructs are pretty similar. And she talks about the space in between the big subject or the collective subjectivity and the small subject or personal subjectivity. She talks about how in the space in between these two, this is where interconnectedness happens, this is where intersubjectivity happens. And this is the place that we should be studying, she suggests. And I agree that in this connection, in this exchange, we're going to be able to truly, fully understand what it is that we are as people, and we're going to be able to self-determine meaningfully. Because if we do not understand our own collectives, the groups of people we happen to be born into, if we don't study the historicity of these groups of people, if we don't look at their ideological constructs, their economic history, if we don't consider all of this, we're not going to be able to become actual subjects. And what does it mean to be a subject? Well, to be a subject means to actually have freedom to act according to necessity, and freedom being a realized necessity is something that Hegel suggested, as far as I remember, and Marx took this and ran with it, because this is such a true statement. Freedom is not when you can do whatever you want. Freedom is not when you decide to paint your walls a certain color or paint your face a certain manner. Freedom is when you realize there is a need that you may have or someone else may have, and there are ways of fulfilling that need, and then you choose consciously out of all the accessible options, you choose consciously whatever it is to do to fulfill this need. Now, and this is not possible to do if your options are limited by a mode of production, by an economic mode of production. And obviously, true absolute freedom is not going to be possible ever, as long as we are in this human form, in this meat form, as long as our bodies have needs, we're always going to be limited, of course, by our necessity to eat and sleep and drink and do all kinds of stuff in order to restore our bodies and to keep them healthy. We are not going to be truly free, but this doesn't really matter. This should not really concern us, because it is the level of freedom and subjectivity that we're looking for. And subjectivity in this regard would be you as a conscious subject deciding what it is you're going to do with your life. And this can only come from a collective that is also a subject. And then Marina also suggests that communities or collectives that are subjects, they're going to constitute a class. And this class will have its own subjectivity as well. So it is kind of like a little nestling doll, like a little matryoshka, where the biggest matryoshka represents the universal humanity, and then you go smaller and smaller and smaller in scale, and the smallest matryoshka is going to be you or me or some other individual person with their own subjectivity. But this is going to be determined by the bigger matryoshka. You're not going to be a completely different type of a matryoshka just because you're human. Just as animals cannot really decide to grow new body parts or to become something they're not meant to be according to the logic of their own evolution, so do people. There are certain limitations to us. Yes, we do learn to overcome these limitations over time, and there are some medical advancements that we are already able to practice, which is great, and which shows that yes, we may in the future be able to overcome some limitations of our physical form, but I'm not going to try and predict what it's going to be, because my personal goals are for humanity to survive, and for humanity not to survive in such conditions where they're going to thrive, and this is only possible when we build communism. But going back to intersubjectivity, this is the space. This is where Marina refers to these three virtues, universal virtues that I mentioned to you in the previous video: truth, beauty, and goodness or morality. And so she's saying when you're having a direct experience, and direct is not the most accurate term for this, it is a philosophical term. It sounds like непосредственно in Russian, but the only word that I can think of right now is directly. So when you experience something directly, not without any kind of instruments and tools to help you, this is where you're going to need to seek the truth, to express beauty and goodness. And she says that when a collective engages in such practices, in such experiences, then they're going to create that intersubjectivity, where the subjects, basically the people participating, are going to be able to define themselves and define the collective together. This is going to be a collective effort. It's not going to be just you asserting your own will, your own desires onto others, because when you do this, you're not seeking the truth, you're seeking self-assertion. That is a totally different thing. So when you seek out the truth together, when you express beauty and goodness for everyone, benefit for everyone, this is when you're going to be able to start determining your own identity. And this is a fundamental process in which we all have to engage if we seek out to meaningfully change the world for the better for everyone. And this is why I highly recommend, if you read anything out of this book, out of Marina Burik's book, read this part, the second chapter, the first part of the second chapter, because it is dedicated to explaining this a little bit more. She goes into detail. She describes how the indirect processes are not going to be able to help us. So when we do engage in meaningful processes, truth-seeking processes, beauty-expressing processes, and benefit-giving processes, we may not be able to fully, truly develop subjectivity, because it is going to be happening using certain tools, and these tools have their own logic. Okay, so this goes back to the logic of everything, right? So according to not only Hegel and Marx, also according to some ancient Greek philosophers, every object in the universe has its own set of laws and rules that can be studied and examined. And these rules are the logic of an object. And I tried to give examples in the past, but then I kind of forgot and I deleted those parts of video. So I'm going to try and give some examples of the logic of things to you. I think I talked about media and how there are certain ways you will be consuming media depending on how it is made, how it is produced. Same goes for everyday objects. So a bracelet is designed to be worn on your wrist. It is impossible to put it on your neck. Even if your neck is very small, it's not going to stretch enough, it's going to rip. So the logic of this object dictates that it is worn around the wrist. The logic of a ring is that it goes over your finger. It is much harder to wear a ring differently. It is possible, but it's not comfortable. It is not designed to be worn this way. So every single object has an unwritten set of rules that we all kind of instinctively understand, and so do all the processes in the universe. They all have the rules that can be studied, that can be understood, and that can be changed over time, that can be overcome over time. When you find the internal contradiction of this object, this is when you will be able to engage in a process of change. But everything will change anyway, whether you participate in these processes or not. So same goes to indirect type of experiences. Marina suggests, she says that if you engage in meaningful activities indirectly, maybe through the internet, that's one example I can think of off the top of my head, or maybe through seeking out some other forms of fulfillment. Maybe you want to, again, assert your own ego. You want to feel good about yourself. This is then going to influence the way you interact with other people. If you seek out to build your own business and you also have a side goal of maybe helping people, this is not going to then lead to a direct experience where you will be able to create intersubjectivity. Obviously, I'm kind of outlining everything that Marina is talking about. If you're interested in hearing more, please let me know. I can read this part again and kind of try and interpret it a little bit better. Just as I said before, unfortunately, Marina Burik's work is not going to be translated into English anytime soon because she doesn't have the funds to hire a professional translator. So we'll see what we can do. We'll be looking into different options, but for now, it's not in the books. It's not going to happen. So let me know what you think. Let me know if this was helpful at all. I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the social medias, even though I don't do much there, and I'll talk to you sometime later.